Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Explain This. You guys name it, we explain it. As always, I'm with Robin Riddle, the star of the show, and we've got an interesting one today because before we started recording, I was like, Robin, I have no idea what that is. and so I'm going to be with you guys here. We're just going to figure it out as Robin explains it. It is PCOS. So Robin, explain PCOS.
All right. So PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome. This is the most common endocrine disorder that affects adult women in the U.S. Estimated about 5 million women in the U.S. have been diagnosed with PCOS. So this is a condition that affects the ovaries. Typically, it's diagnosed usually with a multitude of symptoms plus a ultrasound of the ovaries showing multiple cysts on them. Other symptoms tend to be facial hair growth, androgen type symptoms. So, typically more acne, higher testosterone levels, typically see obesity with this. Menstrual disorders, irregular periods, fertility issues, so trouble getting pregnant whenever they start trying. And typically the underlying cause that's feeding a lot of it is insulin resistance. Up to 70% of women who are diagnosed with PCOS have an underlying insulin resistance.
So would insulin resistance be a cause of it? So if we, from a prevention standpoint, we try to stay away from insulin resistance, or is it mostly genetic?
Mostly genetic. So it tends to run in families, and women typically will start to develop symptoms of this early on, like teenage years as they're starting to go through puberty, start to gain the weight, see the physical symptoms that come up with it. Usually, the mom had it, the grandma had it, something like that. So insulin resistance is more of a combined issue. You have the PCOS, but the insulin resistance drives a lot of the symptoms that go along with it.
So say someone comes in and sees you with PCOS, how would an integrative practitioner like yourself treat this?
So first, a full set of lab panels to see what we're looking at. I want to see where progesterone levels are, where estrogen is, where testosterone is. I want to see an insulin level. I also want to see thyroid levels. A lot of times women with PCOS also tend to have issues with their thyroid. And so we want to make sure thyroid's well controlled. That's going to contribute to obesity and things like that. So got to have that under good control. Usually testosterone's high. So then we're looking at ways to help bring testosterone down. But one of the big things in controlling PCOS well and in improving fertility, improving life overall is controlling the weight and the insulin resistance. So if women go to their OBGYN and are diagnosed with this, typically they're put on birth control pills and metformin.
Okay.
Metformin is one of the most common drugs used for type 2 diabetes, so it will help with the insulin resistance. Typically don't see a ton of weight changes with metformin, just in general. And the birth control is just there to suppress the hormones, but it's not addressing the underlying issue.
Right.
So when it comes time to try to have babies, then these are the women who are really, really struggling, not ovulating, not having regular periods, having a really hard time getting pregnant. And again, insulin resistance is feeding that. So start with a lab panel. I have a whole regimen of vitamins that I love using for PCOS. One of the main ones, and it has been researched in PCOS, is called inositol. There's two versions of it, myo-inositol and D-chiro-inositol.
Interesting.
And it has been researched and shown to help with the insulin resistance, but it also helps in regulating cycles, regulating hormones, and improving fertility.
So that would solve the issue of not being able to be on the birth control pill if you're trying to get pregnant.
Right. Yeah.
Super interesting.
And it's something, like I said, there's been tons of studies that have gone into just that one vitamin and show great success with PCOS.
So if you have PCOS, do you always have it and you're just constantly living with it and treating it? Or so you don't get rid of it necessarily?
We're not going to get rid of it, but we can definitely control all the symptoms that are coming from it.
Okay.
Inositol is a huge piece of it. Every PCOS patient that I ever see, I put on inositol. And some people start seeing regulation in periods within the first month on it.
Interesting.
So other supplements that are really important, because inflammation is huge with PCOS. The inflammation is coming from the insulin resistance. So again, controlling the insulin resistance is critical, but there's other supplements as well. So fish oil is a huge one.
Okay.
Vitamin D, those are both helping inflammation, insulin resistance. NAC, N-acetylcysteine, is going to help as well. Magnesium, probiotics, zinc, B vitamins, CoQ10, all of those have been shown to be really beneficial.
Would you ever decide to put somebody on bioidentical hormones to deal with the PCOS or no?
Sometimes.
Okay.
So PCOS women can have irregularities with their progesterone levels. So sometimes we'll cycle a bioidentical progesterone to get the spike that they need there. Another medication that I really, really love, it is an off-label use for it, but I love Ozempic in women with PCOS. Again, insulin resistance.
Right.
So Ozempic is technically a medication that is created for type 2 diabetics, but insulin resistance is what leads to type 2 diabetes.
So it's very clear you're going after the insulin resistance.
Insulin resistance. I've said that 1,000 times in the last 5 minutes. It is. That is a huge part that is pushing all the major complications that come with PCOS.
Super cool.
So you get the insulin under control. Exercise is important too. Women with PCOS tend to do better with HIIT exercise, high intensity interval training, versus strong cardio or strong weightlifting. You know, do a combo that keeps heart rate fluctuating a lot for whatever reason. They tend to do better with that.
I'm also assuming because you're trying to treat the insulin resistance, maybe a low carb diet, something
Absolutely.
like that. Okay.
Intermittent fasting, low carb.
Okay.
Is a huge benefit as well.
Well, Robin, you have explained PCOS.
Yes.
Guys, that's PCOS for you. We really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. You name it, we explain it. This is Explain This with Robin Riddle. As always, we'll see you guys next time.
Don't go away.